Something not quite being right is precisely the right way of describing it because it's vague. Because it's hard. It's not the easiest thing to define where my sense of something not being quite right is coming from. And that's why I think for a lot of people, it's more about a sense, a gut feeling. And that's why it's easy to dismiss because we can't always put it clearly in words. It's not about specific policy objections per se. I will say that, just as a little side note, that I was politically sentient to some extent, even before Bush. And I don't want to go into this too much because it's just like a fun fact and it has no relevance to our current conversation. But I remember in high school, I became known, and this is maybe where I first became known as a contrarian. Everyone was vaguely liberal or left of center in an undiscerning way. I mean, we were in the suburbs of Philadelphia. It was an upper middle class kind of context, a public school, but a very well regarded one. And in that kind of setting, everyone is going to be this kind of standard issue liberal. Not really well thought out. No one really knows exactly why they're a liberal. It's just not cool to be a conservative or a Republican. And they're seen as like stodgy and moralistic. And they're not like a little bit uptight about matters of, I suppose sexual ethics or abortion, things like that. And that was my entry point into my vaguely Republican sympathetic politics in the late 1990s, that I came from a more, practicing household. Religion was a part of my upbringing. And that was a time when Muslims were generally more sympathetic to the Republican Party because of those moral issues. And so there was a discourse growing up, whether it was at the local mosque or Sunday school, that there was a sense of moral regression. Mm-hmm. And this was during the Clinton years and during Monica Lewinsky and all that. So I think some of those developments magnified that sense that we were morally apart from where mainstream society was going. And that's the kind of sentiment that I started to express at the lunch table in high school in the cafeteria. And I just got a rise. I got a rise out of people, and I found it fun because I was the only one who could kind of like, semi-intelligently express some of the discomfort with the cultural consensus at that time. It just, it was a way to, not to like, I think probably it was a way to stand out. I think in high school, all of us are looking for our own identity. And I think that I didn't really fit in entirely. I wasn't like I wasn't into the loser group, thank God, because I mean that would have been devastating.
Wait, so you became a conservative to not be in the loser group? Is that what you're saying?
No, they're not related. I'm just saying it wasn't that bad. It's not like it ever got to the point where I was in the lowest social group. Mm-hmm. I would say that I was between the lowest social group and like the middling people. So I was in the kind of I was in a vulnerable position. It's sort of like how if you look at the folks who join like Islamist movements in the Middle East, they tend to be middle class, but those with frustrated ambitions. Mm-hmm. So they actually have a lot of potential, or they think they have a lot of potential, but something is blocking them. Not to extend the metaphor or analogy too much, but I think that those of us who felt like we were at risk of being pushed to the lowest rung of the high school status ladder, so we had frustrated ambitions of our own. So I had to think like, how can I make myself seem, more relevant or more interesting or whatever? And maybe this was one way. I'm just speculating here. I don't know. I haven't thought about this.
I'm just speculating about a hypothesis here.
But I'm trying to also make a bigger point that I think that's a hard position to be in.
Okay. Go on. Finish. I was just going to push you then, like, is there any connection between that and sort of the broader, do you see a kind of broader thing at play here that's like more socially broad than that? Like
you're like Shadi. This is all interesting.
Well, no, I mean, I could imagine some of your less charitable readers latching onto this little confession here and being like, this explains everything.
But here's the thing: it doesn't really explain. It doesn't really say a lot about my position now, because I think that I don't think that my issue now is one of status or frustrated ambition, unless people want to psychoanalyze me or something.
Yeah.
I think that my discontent comes from actually being kind of content about a lot of things. I told you this on a text message, a private one, the other week. Like I was a little bit, I was down about some things the other week, last week, I guess. And I think that part of it is I'm very grateful for what I have. I think that I'm content with where I am in different aspects of my career and my writing. But that also makes this kind of underneath the surface bubbling dissatisfaction more striking because it doesn't have a clear source. And that makes me more nervous about it.